President Obama doesn't matter. No, that's not what I'm saying. That's the message that some of his fellow Democrats are putting out there as they're running for their own political lives in their own re-election campaigns this election season. On Thursday, Democratic Senator Jon Tester of Montana, facing his own tough re-election bid, had this to say on my colleague Andrea Mitchell's show.
Is the president at the top of the ticket a drag for your race because he's not popular in Montana?
Andrea, I think it's 6-1, half a dozen the other. I think there's going to be more people vote this election than in 2010, mainly because the president's on the ticket. The president isn't particularly doing well in a state like Montana. But this isn't about the presidential race. This is about a U.S. Senate race from Montana.
And West Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin said he had reservations about voting for either Mitt Romney or President Obama. So here's the thing. Being on a ballot below the presidential ticket may seem like a drag or a lift for some candidates. But remember, for voters, the down-ballot races are often much more important than the race for the White House. Here with me to discuss all politics being local are MSNBC host Alex Wagner, MSNBC contributor Robert Traynham, Nathan Gonzales, editor of the Rothenberg Political Report, and former DCCC press secretary Doug Thornell. All right, thanks everybody for being here. So the notion that all politics are local, that the real nitty-gritty of our lives happens down on the ground somewhere with city councils and school boards, but that one step up from that, Congress, the Senate, the gubernatorial elections, that's where the real action is. So where is the action going into 2012, other than obviously at the White House?
I think it depends on the state. I mean, you take a look at Utah or Massachusetts, well, pretty vanilla. But, you know, in some of these voter initiatives in Ohio and some of the Virginia and some other states, that really matters. When it comes to gay marriage, that really matters. When it comes to propositions in California, that really matters. So, again, it depends on the state. I think both of those senators said something that was very interesting. You know what? If I'm Jon Tester in Montana and I'm running in 2012, I'm scared. I'm very, very scared. Sure. It's because that is a Republican state. However, if I'm an entrenched Republican that's running for re-election, perhaps maybe it's Dick Lugar in Indiana, I'm not too sure Barack Obama really matters at the top of the
although Orrin Hatch is apparently facing a GOP convention issue right now in Utah. So even the entrenched, I mean, Orrin Hatch has been there, what, 38 years?
Right, I'm saying if you're assuming that you're running in the general with Barack Obama at the top.
I think most incumbents shouldn't, they should be worried just in general. This is a bad environment for any incumbent. The approval rating for Congress is basically in the toilet.
Everybody hates Congress.
And it's not getting much better. But I think the interesting thing about the Senate, and Nathan knows this like the back of his hand, is that a number of the top Senate races are in states where the presidential race is really not going to be that important. There's not going to be a ton of advertising. There's not going to be coordinated campaigns. You're talking about Montana. You're talking about Massachusetts. These are places where, you know, it's basically going to be the Senate race or these congressional races on their own. So that's going to be something to I think, pay attention to.
So there may be just as much lift from the bottom, right? So if this is a safe blue or a safe red state, right, and so you're not getting a lot of spending from the presidential candidates, then what you're saying is that the statewide Senate races can provide the opportunity for people to remember there's an election showing up.
Right. I mean, I think that for the case of Jon Tester, it's about and for others that are running in these places where people need split ticket voters, presidential voters, then cross over and vote for a different party. It's about how the election is framed. Jon Tester wants to have a very personal election, that he is more Montana. He was tweeting about the sack lunch that he had in his tractor when
he said he wants to make the U.S. Congress a little more Montana, right?
And so it's about how the election is framed. And the same goes for Massachusetts. Senator Scott Brown, he's going to need potentially 500,000 voters that voted for Obama at the top of the ticket to turn around and vote for him if he wants to win re-election. He's airing television or radio ads about the Red Sox that don't have anything to do with politics, and so that's going to decide
I want to pause on Massachusetts for a second, because I do think that that's one of these non-presidential races that nonetheless people are paying a lot of attention to. And you're right, he's running the Boston Red Sox as his commercial. I think we've got that sound, don't we? Okay, let's take a quick listen.
Hello, this is Scott Brown. Well, it's spring training again, and while it's fun to look forward to a new season of Red Sox baseball, I want to take a look back for just a moment. Two of my favorite players are retiring, people who meant a lot to us over the years.
That is all politics. I don't care what it is. That is very, very smart. Here's why. It's because it's speaking to what? The white average middle class or lower middle class individual out there that is probably saying, you know what, throw all the bums out in Washington, D.C. I don't even want to hear about politics, but talk to me about the Red Sox. And so understanding that, it is called micro-targeting, and Scott Brown is speaking to that voter out there who has politics in the back of their minds, sports in the front of their mind, and he's trying to conflate the two.
But Scott Brown is doing something interesting that you don't see in American politics all that often these days, which is touting his record as a moderate and as someone who got things done in Washington, which is, and the race is really interesting because we've talked a lot about the Republican caucus being really fractured and sort of shifting sands in terms of the magnets moving right. Here in Massachusetts, you have Elizabeth Warren, who's a very strong liberal candidate, and Scott Brown, who of course is a Republican, but is very moderate, and it'll be really interesting to see how Democrats react to that.
Right, to this local way of doing politics without talking about politics.
This is the guy who drove in a pickup truck. You know, remember, he won. It was a special election, but he won in Massachusetts because he knows his state.
But the thing about Scott Brown is, I think, you know, he ran as a Tea Party candidate when he won that special election. He had a lot of support from the Tea Party, from conservatives, and he's now walking away from that support.
Yeah, touting the moderate.
And you know, I mean, I don't know what it is about flip-flopping in the state of Massachusetts, but it seems to be running rampant in that with politicians there. But the fact is,
he got his talking point in there.
No,
he did it.
I'll be quiet. No, but my point is look, he's doing what he has to do to get reelected. I think he's going to have a tough time in a state where, you know, as Nathan points out, the president's going to run up a huge number there. And Elizabeth Warren, say what you want about her, I like her, and I think she has proven to be a really good candidate so far, raising a ton of money. Yeah. She's catching up to him, and I think that's a race that Democrats can pick up.
The other thing when you talk about the dynamics of local versus national is what's happening in state legislatures across the country. Yeah. And there's a big article today in the Times discussing how the GOP understands that the bills that are being passed on everything from evolution to contraception to immigration at the local level are really complicating things for the party, which is a very
at the national level.
At the national level,
sorry.
That's right.
In the House, you have over 60 House Republicans who represent districts that Barack Obama won in 2008. So in 2010, it was a terrible environment for Republicans, but now it's shifting a bit to be for Dems, right? Yeah, right? It's becoming a bit more neutral now. And so how do they juggle, you know, representing districts where the president is not a evil person, and with, you know, keeping that conservative support that put him in there? We're
going to come right back. I want to talk to Nathan about all these other races, and I want to talk about the one thing that all members of Congress are doing all the time, and that'll be right when we come back.